Hello and welcome to Seeing Red. It is June 11th, 2024. I am Will Leitch here as always with the great Bernie Miklasz. Follow us on Twitter @/X at Seeing Red Pod. Emails seeingredpod@gmail.com. Lots of good questions to get to this week. Bernie, I can always tell when the Cardinals are struggling because we get more questions. We get more comments. As you know, hosting a radio show and writing for as long as you have, people are more dialed up when the team is struggling. And I wouldn't say, I don't know if the team is struggling or more as they just are what they are. On one hand, they are just a half game out of the wild card, which is really kind of incredible when you think about it. Though to be fair, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams within 3 games of the wild card. So it's all tied. So they're half game out of the wild card. But if that's the good news. The bad news is they're 2 games under 500. And if they lose to Paul Skeens, the guy that throws a million miles an hour and seems to do it all on Instagram, they will be in last place. So what I feel like there is that 1 step forward, 1 step side, 2 steps back, 2 steps up, do-si-do the Cardinals have been doing kind of all year. I think that's where they still are. Where do you assess where they are right now when they theoretically should be in a, quote, easier part of their schedule?
All right. Well, let me think. A lot of things. Listen, maybe they are who we think they are. I think we try to talk ourselves. I know I do. I'll speak for myself. Try to talk ourselves into wanting to believe they're better than they are. But the record is what it is. And, more than that, if you just look at the broader picture, this is a team that ranks 13th in the National League in runs per game, or 14th maybe. They're down near the bottom, sorry. The offense is very, very inconsistent. They can't get they're the worst team in the NL with batting average, runners in scoring position. They're way down there in home runs, extra base hits, things like that. Stolen bases, they don't do that. And then, the pitching hasn't been bad, but it can be spotty at times. And I think the Cardinals going into Monday might be in like 20th or so in like average runs allowed per game. For a while, we were really fired up about the defense, but that's kind of gone south. And, there's been the return of sloppy play. And there's just, I think it's just really, really hard for this team to maintain any kind of traction. I mean, that one winning stretch was excellent. And they beat good teams and it was fun to watch, but was that just a flash? I don't know. They're 4-6 in their last 10 since winning that Cincinnati series. And, maybe we just have to accept that this is the way it's going to be. I mean, at this point, I mean, we're past 1/3 into the season. What reason do we legitimately have to think that this isn't the team and that this team will get better? Like they're going to be a lot better moving forward. I just can't talk myself into that because every time we start to think it, as I mentioned, they take another 3 steps back.
Yeah, and a lot of this is, listen, those 2 losses against Colorado, those were 2 tough 1-run losses that I will say this, I do feel comfortable saying the Cardinals are better than the Rockies. That I know they just split with them, but it felt like those 2 games got away rather than the Cardinals played a team that was equally as good at them. So great, they're better than the Rockies. But, you look at things. We've talked a lot about what got us originally excited about this team, even when they were off to a slow start against a tough schedule. The thing that got us excited about them was, hey, they still play defense, right? There's a lot of that stuff that they were doing wrong. They've cleaned it up. The base running's better. The defense is better. You can see some logic to the starting pitching, and now it doesn't feel that way. It feels like this is a team that is getting by a good bullpen, which sprung a couple leaks against Colorado, but I still feel like it's weird to say considering a little shout out to Chaim Bloom, I guess, because it does feel like the bullpen is now the strength of this team,
right?
Which is kind of incredible that I don't think anyone would have thought that going in. But that does seem the strength of the team. But, there's so many little ways that they're just in danger of springing leaks here or there, right? Like they're in danger of the fact that Sonny Gray has taken a couple steps back. He's
Right.
not been horrible, but he's not been the ace. And I think, one of the things that's hard when you have a team like this is when something gets going really well, you're like, oh, awesome. But then another leak springs up over here. Like then it's the
Right.
defense. So then
Hmm.
it's the fifth starter. And then, all right, Palante steps back up and then he has a bad start. And then Lance Lynn can't get out of the fourth inning. And, all right, great. Gorman's on a hot streak. Now there's no one in center field can hit. And I want to talk about Arenado and Goldschmidt in a moment. But like at a certain level, the problem is not that the Cardinals don't have talent. It's not they're not the Rockies. Like I feel comfortable, even though they just split at home against the Rockies, and that was frustrating. I did watch every game of that series. I do think the Cardinals are better than the Rockies. Like they're not,
Well,
they're not plummeting.
I'm, I'm not laughing at you, sir,
Yeah,
but
I'm okay.
I'm laughing at the idea. It's like, you know, sort of the declaration
Yeah,
of
we got on a base level.
yeah, the declaration of stating pride is like,
Yeah.
well, we don't suck as much as the Rockies. I
No,
mean,
we did.
that's kind of what it's come to, right? That's why
Well,
I'm
they still
that's why I'm
split them
laughing.
at home.
Yeah, that's right.
But I definitely did not walk away from that thing like, wow, are we as good as the Rockies? No, the Cardinals are better than the Rockies, and I think they're better. But I mean, and listen, that's the good news of this, I guess, is when you look around, everyone. I've said repeatedly that I just want to spend my summer watching the Cardinals, unless you live in a place that has Comcast or Infinity, but we'll get into that in a moment as well. But at least I can spend my summers watching the Cardinals and not have the season be over already. And I think that is true. But for what it's worth, that's only true because the Cubs are bad, and the Cubs, the Reds, the Giants, Pirates, Diamondbacks, Nationals, and Mets are all, and really the Padres are all essentially the same team. They're all the same team. They all have a lot of problems, and they're all just kind of hanging along. And that is great for the Cardinals. Good fortune, though. It's worth noting, out of all the teams I just mentioned, the team with the worst run differential is the Cardinals. That's the one with the worst run differential of all of those teams. They've had some good fortune just to be able to hang about this. And I think that's the thing about the team is that, like, you see, all right, Gorman's hot right now, and Burleson's come around. Shout out to Bernie Miklasz once again being right about Burleson and me being wrong. I have to bring that up every time. You see Donovan, maybe coming around a little bit.
Mhm.
I think there's some things that you get excited about. But then there's other little problems pop up. The defense has all these troubles. Ivan Herrera cannot throw anyone out to save his life. Dylan Carlson got his first 3 RBIs of the season. Everyone got like super excited all of a sudden. And there's no offense out of center field. Tommy Edmonds not coming back soon. Lance Lynn is starting. He has his peripheral numbers are better than it seems like they would be. I imagine he would have a massive FIP. He doesn't actually. Michaelis has the highest FIP on the team. He has the highest ERA on the team. But like Lynn just feels like a guy that like runs out of gas in the fourth inning, which
Yeah.
is not what we were getting out of Lynn. And that's the problem is you need, like, they're hanging on in that, the Lynn hasn't exploded yet. Palante gives you a huge start on Sunday. Otherwise, they lose 3 out of 4 against Colorado. But that's the thing. It's just all these things on the edges have to be going just right, just to be able to hang on, even with things that are going well, like Gorman and Burleson. And so I feel like the best possible version of this team could make a run in that wild card chase and be the team that gets it.
Right.
But once we get the best possible version of something else falls over. And I don't want to talk about Goldschmidt and Arenado yet, because I'm going to get to them in a second. But I do think that is part of the problem. You expect one thing you expect ups and downs from a guy like Gorman and Burleson, some of these young players. You don't expect your 2 stars to be what they are. And I think that base level that you think you have, you don't have that. And frankly, you're not getting from Gray anymore right now either. And I think that's the worrisome part, is even the guys you can count on, you feel like you can't count on, which means if everything goes wrong at once, again, like it has before, then the bottom could fall out.
Yeah, and pardon the cliche, but it's like the perfect storm. And I know you want to make Goldie and Aaron on a separate discussion thing, which
No,
we will.
We can start
But
that now. We can start
but
that.
when you talk about like things to expect, I think it was reasonable to expect that Jordan Walker would build upon what he did last year. And if you go back and look at his rookie season, all in all, the numbers by the end of the year were really good. I mean, not rookie of the year good, but he just showed, first voyage through the majors. There's a lot of talent there, and then he just it just went away. I mean, he just got into a rut that he's still in, and 155 when they sent him down. He's not going to be back anytime soon. So there was a reasonable expectation that he would be one of your star hitters, and there was also a reasonable expectation, even though we adjusted our expectations and realized Goldie and Arenado were not going to be what they were in 2022. And so let's just kind of recalibrate what we think of them going forward. But I don't know that any of us really saw Arenado crashing the way he has at age 33. And even though Goldie has actually been pretty good since around May 11th, 12th, still, we're talking about diminishing returns as a general principle. He's going to be 37 years old at the end of the season. So some of the things we thought we could count on, and I don't think we were being giddy or unrealistic. I think these were common sense things to say, yeah, we can count on this. It didn't transpire. It didn't come through. And it's kind of like, who's going to be the star of the game? It's like people, they take turns, but that's not necessarily a good thing. They don't have a real firm foundation of like, okay, you can count on these guys all the time. They just don't have that, other than maybe Ryan Helsley. They really don't have that. Mason Wynn, I would put in as well. They really don't have that in a lot of spots, if any. I mean, you just don't. Yeah, when they play well, there's certain guys are going to come to the forefront and do very well. But again, that doesn't last. So there is just a really shaky foundation overall, except for that bullpen. So yeah, it's hard to imagine consistency emerging from this group. But again, there is still a lot of season left, and who knows? There's a lot of bad teams in the National League, so the Cardinals have plenty of company.
Better than the Rockies, just going on record.
That's right.
Better than the Rockies. Do not be discouraged by a split at home against the Rockies. They're better than the Rockies.
May not be better than the Nationals, though. So, but anyway.
Yeah, we'll find out they're better than the Pirates in the next couple of days. It's funny, many people have pointed out that because the Pirates are around with the half game of the Cardinals, they're in the wild card race. The idea that there may be no actual scarier team to play in a short wild card series than the Pirates. The idea of having Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, and for kind of the third star whose name's just fallen out of my head.
Mitch Keller, Billy Falters,
thank you, Mitch Keller. The idea that like those three guys would be scary, certainly scarier than facing Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, and I guess Lance Lynn or Miles Michaelis, as you would see. Note on Jordan Walker before we talk about Arenado and Goldschmidt. He has had 134 RBI, 134 at bats at Memphis. He's got one homer. Like he's got one homer, man.
It's just like it's sad.
It's worrisome. He's got one homer. He's got he got 9 doubles. I guess that's kind of encouraging, but he's got 9 walks. He struck out 24. Like it's just, I don't know, man. And at the end of last year, for all this talk, there's all this talk about Ellie De La Cruz, and how excited the Reds were. Jordan Walker had a better year than Ellie De La Cruz did last year. For all Walker's struggles, for all that sitting down, he had a better year than De La Cruz did. And I think it was reasonable to think that there would be steps forward for him this year. And listen, you still hear those big guy Judge comparisons, the idea if they can just get the swing right. But it's funny, Derek Gould talked about this on his podcast this week about the idea that the problem with Judge, though, when he was young, because remember, Judge really didn't get going until he was like 25 or 26 years old. Walker's only 22. Judge's problem was he couldn't make contact. And he struck out all the time, and so they needed to be able to figure out his big, long swing, how to get the power out of it while having him not strike out 250 times a year. That's actually not Walker's problem. Like, Walker strikes out a little bit more than you'd like, but the problem is he just doesn't lift the ball. He doesn't hit the ball for power, and it's worrisome because that's starting to feel a little bit more like, I mean, I know he's 22 and lots of guys go through lots of changes, but certainly Walker's I would almost feel comfortable seeing Walker strike out more. I would almost feel comfortable seeing strike out more, but working for more lift in his swing or working for that, adjusting that because that's what baseball is now. And I don't know, it's just worrisome. I mean, because it's funny when you look at last year, the Cardinals were so desperate for a right fielder last year to figure something out. I I don't really feel like Walker. I think Marmol has said when Walker will come back, he will be the regular right fielder. That feels a long way from now. Like, that doesn't feel like anything that's pending. I think if Walker had a hot couple of weeks, I still don't know if that happens, particularly with Contreras slowly working his way back. I think with you need a spot for Burleson, you got to need a spot for Donovan, you got a spot for Newbar when he comes back. I don't know. It feels like Walker one lost season was one thing, and there's the danger of two lost seasons for a guy that the Cardinals have been planning on building their entire normal moving
Right.
forward around.
Right. And Contreras will be back and that should help. And that's one guy I should point out. I think Cardinals and their fans can count on him, assuming that when he gets back, everything's just as it should be in terms of that forearm healing up. But so that'll be one thing they can look forward to, but it's there's not much help down in AAA. That's the thing you'd like to say, well, they got these 3 or 4 people, two couple hitters, a couple starting pitchers. They're on the cusp. They'll be up here any time now, and that's just simply not the case. So, which is another bummer to interject into this. The farm system. Look, there's some good young players on the Cardinals now. The ones that have graduated. You like with Burleson and Gorman and Wynn, and who am I leaving out? Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
There's it's a pretty.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pretty good delegation of prospects that have made the graduation, but there's not much behind them, and so you're like, well, how does this going to get better? Like, where's the improved consistency going to come from? It's just hard to envision it. And I could be wrong, of course. We've seen teams kind of putter along and then catch fire, but again, catching fire and being like really good over 13, 14, 15 games. I mean, that doesn't mean you're good. It means you got hot for a while. And we saw that with the Cardinals. And then again, it didn't last. Not that we expected it to last to the extent that it did in terms of winning percentage, because that was only going to be a phase, but still, that search for consistency, I think, is going to be there all season, unfortunately.
But I mean, listen, that's what the NL wildcard chase is this year. Like,
Yeah.
bob around 500 and then win 6 in a row at the right time. Like, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
If you win, if the Cardinals, and that's I think is one thing that's frustrating about that Rocky series is, you'd like to get 3 or 4 out of that. If you had 3 or 4, you'd be in the wild card spot right now. Like, this is theoretically a couple of weeks stretch here where there should be some wins on the table for them.
Right.
Will they be able to take advantage of it? You kind of have to, because I don't know, maybe they can only beat the Orioles, Red Sox, and Cubs at home, but certainly it feels like there's an opportunity missed when you do that, because you don't have to be, you don't look at any of those teams in the wild card chase and be like, wow, they're so underperforming, someone's going to rise to the top. They all kind of look like 500 teams to me. I feel like the Cubs are a little better. Cubs and Padres should be a little bit better, but otherwise, I find myself looking at all those teams and thinking the Cardinals, for all their problems, have everybody else has problems too. And it feels like there's 4 wild cards. I don't think anyone's catching the Brewers. I think the Brewers will come back to earth a little bit, but frankly, they already got a 7-game lead over everybody. Do you see any team in the NL Central getting so hot? The Reds had a hot streak, and now, we'll see, right? Like, I think that the Reds had their hot streak, and now the Cardinals have had theirs. The Cubs surely will have one. Maybe the Pirates will have one. That's just kind of what the wild card chase is. That to me brings us to Goldschmidt and Arenado. Goldschmidt, I feel like I think it's important because we connect them all the time. I think it's important to note that there is difference. Goldschmidt is a free agent after this season. He is 37, going to be 37 years old. He is an older guy. And frankly, as you pointed out, he has been better. I think his on-base streak is at almost 30 now.
Well, yeah, it's like 26. And the thing of it is, I don't care about that number, but in the 26 consecutive games of getting on base, I mean, the body of work is strong. It's like a 472 slugging percentage, on base percentage way up. I'm not saying it is the peak form Goldschmidt, but the numbers, in fact, the numbers are like basically identical to what he did last year. In other words, during this 26 game stretch, he's got an OPS of about 800, and that's what his OPS was last season. Now, if he can keep that up, at least you're getting, you're getting a better version of Goldschmidt than we saw, up until May 11th, was hitting 190. And now, he's been really good after that. But can it last? I mean, he still strikes out too much. But yeah, he seems to have found some stuff. And he's a smart hitter. I think he's adjusting. But yeah, the guy from 2022 will never come back in form that way. But
which is
if
fine. I didn't
if
expect it.
yeah, if the Cardinals can get the 23 version of Goldie for the rest of the season, that would be a big help, because the 23 version of Goldie wasn't bad at all. He's pretty good. He just wasn't great, but he was pretty good.
Yeah, and I think reasonable for a 37-year-old guy in the last year of a contract. It's all kind of bonus at that point, right? Like you want to see that, and I think he's made adjustments and found. I agree. I don't. You're never gonna see MVP guy, but I think you can reasonably believe that Goldschmidt could be this guy up a little bit or down a little bit for the rest of the year, which that's playable, right? Again, you want to be able to, like, Goldschmidt's not, he's going to be, as long as he's not hurt, he's your first baseman. If he's giving you above out of average production, I'll take it. We've all given it. There's no one's pretending that Goldschmidt is an MVP guy anymore. But if he gives you above average production at first base, he's still a pretty good defensive player. When you look at the defensive problems, he's not necessarily one of them. So that's fine. I'll take it. You're not tied to him for a long time. I think, I think there's a longer discussion maybe later to have about Goldschmidt's tenure with the Cardinals and how that will be remembered and how that will be thought of. But that's something later. I think you can manage that. Arenado has me concerned.
You should, as he should. I mean, it's not.
And it's beyond. I mean, he just the hitting is. We've seen just how out of rhythm and whack he's been all year. Even when he hits a homer, it feels like he just kind of like happened to catch the right pitch at the right time. It feels like his swing is random and off center. But I actually find the more alarming thing to be the defense.
Yeah.
Because that is the one thing you can, like, Arenado may figure something out offensively. It's hard to imagine being this herky-jerky of a guy really for the next 3 years. He maybe, I will see, but the defense to me is a sign of, oh, there could be like immediate rapid decline right now. And I think that's really what's worrisome, because Goldschmidt, I think, listen, I wrote a piece for MLB.com last year making the argument that Cardinals should consider trading Goldschmidt. We talked about this a lot last year. I don't think anyone thought they should trade Arenado. I think that, like, this is a centerpiece guy, this guy you're building around. And listen, the Cardinals got such a great deal to get him, and the Rockies are still paid part of his money. All that worked out. But like, you look at him now and you extrapolate that out like a couple years from now, that becomes legitimately scary. And an age where, frankly, it seems too early for this to be happening to him. Like, that's the worrisome part to me. Arenado, there's an electricity to Arenado in Colorado. In his first year, I think, in St. Louis, there was an excitement to him. He looks old and not into it now. And I think that's the most scary part about Aaron.
No, this isn't a fluke. This is not a phase. His numbers started to decline last season, and his defense started to decline last season, although he rallied, and by the end of the year, he was only slightly below average. But his defense is really cratered this year, and I don't think it's going to get that much better, if at all. But if you go to StatCast, and he's never been a big StatCast star, but if you just look at his profile, it's really depressing. I mean, there's just really not much there that you see that would make you say, okay, all right, that's good. At least that's good. I mean, it's across the board really bad. And he can't turn on pitches and drive them anymore. And that was how he made his money, hitting home runs. And his bat speed is not good. His hard hit rate is unbelievably bad. I mean, the barrel rate. I mean, all these different things. He's like in the bottom, 10 to 20 to 25% percentile, and that stuff's not going to get better. If it is, it's going to be nominal improvement. It's not going to get better in a fundamental way that'll last. And he's one of the. I hate to say it, but he looks like a classic example of a guy who aged quickly. We didn't see this coming, not at age 33. But it seems like it's happening really fast now, and that That's kind of a discouraging thing to think about if you're the Cardinals because he's under contract and people will say, "Well, trade him," but who wants his contract and his declining profile offensively and defensively? I mean, what's the trade value there considering the financial part involved? I mean, I don't know that there's any easy way out if it ever comes to the Cardinals saying, "Boy, we would like to find a way out of this." I don't know that there is one.
I have a really hard time. Again, I know people love to blame Mo or love to blame DeWitt or something
Right.
you can't blame for crying out loud. We were all worried he was going to opt out after
That's right.
2021.
That's exactly
And
right.
it felt like he was doing the Cardinals a favor by not doing it. And now you look at that contract, you're like, yeah, like it never occurred to me. I'll say this. You look at the way that that option they have the last year. He signed for 35 million this year, 32 million next year, 27 million in 26. And I think there's an option after that. The Cardinals theoretically, let's see how that option works. He has the opt out of you can opt in. No, there's no option. There's option. That's it. That's it. 2026. He's 27 million for that year. That is, I mean, that looks rough now. And I don't, he's 33. Like, that's not that old. Like, it's not that old. You look at someone like Matt Chapman, for example, he's had a little resurgent year in San Francisco, and he's hitting better than Arenado. And I don't know how he turns it around because you're right. You talk about that Statcast never really loving him and never Exelazi. He's always been a vibes player. He's always been a vibes player, and that's okay because he's always found a way, and he's been a certain electricity. And you wonder if it's not. I don't mean this to criticize the guy's emotions or anything, or he is a human being, but it feels more than just physical. I'll put it that way. It feels more like a guy that played like he had a live wire kind of running through him. He doesn't play like that anymore. Like there was a nervous energy that's still there, but it was a productive energy before. And now he just kind of feels like an older player. and Arenado, it's one thing for an older player like Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt feels like an older player, but he's always hit the ball hard. He's always had a certain plate zone plate discipline. As he slows, there's still base things that it feels like Goldschmidt can fall back on. I'm not sure Arenado has those things. I think that's the most worrisome part about it. He's a gifted athlete. He's a professional baseball player. I'm not saying he's not a good athlete, but he doesn't have that base level stuff of size or power or discipline or exit velocity that a guy like Goldschmidt has. And that to me is the most worrisome part about Arenado. Because if he gets old and doesn't have the vibes, I don't know what he is as a player anymore. And not forget just the money, but just the idea of the Cardinals are built around Nolan Arenado being an all-star, and he is very far from being.
And the thing of it is, and I'm moving ahead a little bit, but if you look at how this is going to end, meaning the end of the 2024 season. And again, the Cardinals have at least a chance to get into the playoffs. So maybe something happens. I can't foreclose on that possibility. It'd be silly to do that given the nature of the race in the wild card in the NL. But anyway, if this is in fact the end, this is going to be an all-timer in terms of like what we thought would happen with those two as teammates. Didn't happen at all. I mean, yeah, the team made the playoffs 21 and 22, bottomed out last year, mediocre this year, but they've been teammates since 2021, and as of right now, they've appeared as teammates in 3 postseason games, and the team's 0-3, and they're 2 for 22 in those 3 games. I mean, I don't think that's what we would have predicted. And again, I don't think that I don't think we were saying, well, both of these guys are going to go. Hey, we'll get to the playoffs, so this will be unbelievable. They'll take over. I don't think we were saying that, but we thought, okay, they're going to produce because they've always produced, and they're going to come through in the postseason. That's something you can have some pretty good confidence about, and it's been the exact opposite, So, and then if this is going to be the end at the end of the year, that this team, those teammates go apart with Goldie not coming back. Wow, what a bitterly disappointing experience it was,
Yeah.
based on what we thought was going to happen.
I mean, they never won a playoff series.
Yeah, well,
They
0
never
and
won a
3,
playoff se
0 and 3.
Yeah, so, and we'll see again, they're still in this race. And listen, I think I don't wanna be, like, too entirely down on stuff. Like, there's stuff to be excited about this team, like, there is. Like, and it's funny, I wanna this is a good transition into a couple of notes we got this week from people basically talking about the vibe of the fan base and what it feels like to go to a Cardinals game right now. And I think Mason Wynn is someone that people get excited about watching. Like Burleson's a good player, but I don't think anyone's like, "Hey, we're going to go see Alec Burleson today." And Donovan's a good player, but I don't think Donovan like Mason Wynn. I think to a lesser extent Contreras. And, I think when he comes back, and I think Gorman is a guy that like he's streaky, but like, I mean, he
Yep.
leads the team in homers. He's in the top 10 in homers in the National League. Like Gorman is doing stuff for you, and I think, so there are things to be excited about, but I think it's the general vibe. And I want to get a comment because something I got from, from Norman Rodriguez. He emailed, he said his comment was about last weekend's attendance. He says, took two of his grandkids to the game on Saturday, and it was brutal. Having been there and observed firsthand the numerous empty seats, I'd be very surprised if the actual attendance is way below the announced attendance. I have a good coaching friend who was at the game on Friday, and his estimation the crowd was definitely below. My comment is, I think that part of the reason for this is the Cardinals are failing to capture the entertainment dollar of fans like they used to.
That's right.
Although it pains me to say this, the game is more entertainment than a game in a larger sense. The brand of baseball we are seeing is not entertaining, and people are finding other venues to spend their entertainment dollars on. For example, my son has been a diehard Cardinals fan for 25 years, and he chose to attend the St. Louis SC soccer game rather than the Cardinals game Saturday because he thought it'd be a better product to watch and cheer for. I'll be curious your thoughts on this as well. I mentioned this a little bit last year when I took my son to go see the Cardinals play the Nationals. They lost on Friday, and we had the option of going to a Cardinals game or seeing St. Louis SC, and we went to St. Louis SC. We'd already been to a Cardinals game. I would never just go to St. Louis SC and not see a Cardinals game. It's a pilgrimage for me. But the difference of vibes, of excitement, of feeling that you're a part of something, that you're attached to something that cares about you is the difference between St. Louis SC, or I hear the same thing about the Battlehawks. I hear that, like I hear excitement about you're there, so I can't speak to this. I won't be there until July. But you certainly watch these games. You see the empty seats, which is one thing, but there is a sense of about the Cardinals and within the fan base right now. I don't think it's even anger. Like there have been times of anger. Last year was a great year for anger. Now it kind of feels like, okay,
Resignation. Yeah.
I feel like I'm glad that they're in the pennant chase. I guess it doesn't feel like they're in the pennant chase, and it feels like when they win, you're like relieved rather than excited, and when they lose, you're frustrated rather than angry. And I think you see that in the fan base, in the stands. You have a daily radio show in St. Louis. Do you hear this from the listeners? From the outside, it feels that way to me. Do you see it that up close?
Yeah, I mean, the good feelings are gone, and there's certainly, I believe the Cardinals in terms of tickets sold, but the point being made by the person who emailed us, and thank you very much, is that a lot of people have, buy tickets, but don't show up, which is really alarming if you're the Cardinals. But there's a lot of reasons for this, and it's not just one thing. And even first of all, losing, and the fact they've been one of the worst teams in the National League the last 2 years when you add it all together. In fact, they've had no postseason success for a long time. But going by Cardinal standards, it's been a long time. Used to be an annual October event, like a festival. They'd be in postseason, winning games. How far will they go? Hey, they didn't get there, but boy, it was fun to watch this. The Cardinals. The Cardinals won that one postseason round against Atlanta in 2019. I mean, that's 5 years ago, and there's no real hope in sight. I mean, so you have the losing factor. It's kind of a boring team. It's a mediocre team. It's low on charisma, and that doesn't apply to all players. I'm just talking about as a team as a whole. And there's the perception, the belief that ownership's not fully committed to winning. And whether that's true or not, Doesn't matter because if that's what your customers believe, then there's going to be consequences for that. I don't think, and you and I have talked about this, I don't think there's any doubt there's John Mozeliak fatigue. And part of that is their messaging as a team, whether it be Bill DeWitt Jr., Bill DeWitt III, or Mo. The messaging actually, it's supposed to make people feel better. And a lot of times they actually say stuff that really irritates. I mean, really irritates
Huh.
the fans who already are irritated.
Like it feels very toned down.
Yeah, and so they have a below average offense. The Goldschmidt Arenado years didn't lead to what we all thought it would. They lack charisma as a team. That could change with Mason Witt and some others, but as of right now, it's just kind of a dull product. People don't like the manager. I mean, that's another thing. I hear that all the time. They blame him for everything. That people can blame whatever they want, but I think more than anything, you got to look at the roster. He's been handed like this ludicrous fifth starter thing that's gone on for it's just absurd. There's just a lot of. I also think too that maybe there's more of a reluctance, especially since the team is so mediocre and it's basically a 500 team at home. It's under 500 since the start of last year at home. There is this concern about going to downtown St. Louis. And it's like, well, I don't want to go down there, especially to watch this team, that kind of thing. I think it's, for the record, I think it's really safe around the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
as a
but
out-of-towner, I don't feel that way at all.
but
But I know people from my hometown who do.
and I hear that quite often. Um, I don't. Listen, there's a bunch of different factors, but yes, it all adds up to um, fans being resigned, being disillusioned, being angry, being demoralized, losing confidence, losing hope. Because it's one thing if they have a really bad year, if they like they did last year, but the problem is there's very little faith, there's very little confidence that the people that are running the franchise now can take them out of this, can get them back to the promised land. That's the problem. You can have a really bad year, but if your people are good and they know what they're doing, you'll say, well, listen, they'll get this thing going again real soon. Fans with the Cleveland Guardians probably feel that way. It's like, okay, had a bad year, but these guys are really smart. They'll figure it out. I don't think that exists anymore. Not much at all. So it is what it is. It's just really kind of a bummer phase for the St. Louis Cardinals. And is this the 1970s all over again? I mean, there's elements of that. Is this the pre-Bill DeWitt purchase Cardinals in the early 90s? It kind of feels like that way, and we've talked about it. So anyway, I just think there's just so many factors that goes into it. It's not just one thing. You just add it. In fact, I think I'm going to be writing about this. So I've been sort of making notes to myself. So I appreciate the discussion because I don't want to overlook anything. You know what I mean? There's so many factors. I don't want to overlook anything.
And, it's not just fans. Our podcast muse, I guess, Will Haraway, who, of course, does the music for this podcast as well, sent me the athletic piece this week, which was basically the C. Trent Rosecrans wrote a piece about the 2024 player poll that the Athletic
Right.
every single year. They had 86 votes of players asking which team would you sign with if contracts, state taxes, and rosters were not a factor. First place was Atlanta, Second place was the Red Sox, then Dodgers, Rangers, Yankees, Cubs, Padres, Phillies. I'm going to list all the teams. I'm not going to list all the teams, but one thing I can tell you that are not mentioned of the first 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 teams are the St. Louis Cardinals. People would sign with the Rays before they signed with the Cardinals. They signed with the Marlins before they signed with the Cardinals. They signed with the Astros before they signed with the Cardinals. Remember the whole Cardinals advantage was the idea that this was a place that you wanted to play. Sonny Gray talked about this a little bit, and it felt almost nostalgic. The idea oh, wow, a free agent that said they'd always wanted to come here. Gibson, you understood. Kyle Gibson, he's from St. Louis area. It made a lot of sense. But remember, that used to be a thing. Now, in the McGuire and Roland and Edmonds idea was, the St. Louis is a place where players want to play. They can't wait to come here. Now they're not even getting votes on this sort of thing. And I think that speaks to the larger problem. So I think when this gets portrayed as a fan thing, and listen, We'll go back to Bill DeWitt III's comments about like, well, if, I find it amusing when fans say that not going to the ballpark is going to help matters. Like, it's not just fans that are looking at the Cardinals right now and saying, well, what is this? Well, what's going on here? And it's not just fans that are doing that. That's now filtered out throughout baseball. And the fact that you can have a poll like this, where the Cardinals used to top this list. Cardinals used to be Cardinals, Yankees, Dodgers. Those used to be the teams that people could not wait. The players could look at those fans. Look what it's like there. How awesome. Do you look at St. Louis? Do you think any player looks at what's going on in St. Louis right now and says, oh man, I can't wait to be a part of that? They don't. And why would they? And I think it's not just a fan thing, is my point. It's not just a thing that only fans are noticing. We got a nice note from Michael Quino, is what I'm going to say this. He's calling himself the Seeing Red Pod Texas correspondent.
I like it.
One advantage of the new battle schedule is every year the Cardinals making a trip to visit to Texas. Saw them in Arlington last year where it was a listless game where it was becoming obvious what we were in for. He went to the Houston game on Wednesday, and he says, given how we've all started to focus on how extended mediocrity has affected the fan base, I found myself comparing last year to Arlington this year and Houston. They said they were both early summer weekday games. He said there were way fewer Cardinal fans in the stand. He said about a third of the crowd in Arlington last year were Cardinals gear, and they were louder than Rangers fans. Remember that, by the way? Remember when that used to happen all the time? Cardinals fans would shout the home fans. Doesn't happen anymore. This year in Houston, it was a more scattering among an already pretty sparse crowd. Of course, Astros fans are starting to get pretty grumbly themselves. Said in a lot of ways, it really feels like, he said after the loss, Cardinals were still pretty cheery. Walker looked good last year. This year, the Cardinals felt mostly just relieved when the Cardinals fans, but relieved when they won, like the dentist told them that they didn't have any cavities. And I think you see that. I think that's something. I've not seen the Cardinals play on the road yet this year, but I think you can tell there were times where it felt like I've been to Coors Field and it felt like the Cardinals fans were taking that place over. That's not happening either. And I think it's just an obvious thing now that those interviews that they give with the local stations, whether it's Mo or DeWitt the third or whoever does the interviews, I think they're missing the point now if they think this is just fans grumbling. It's more than that. Best of baseball seeing.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's like across all whatever measures we want to use. I mean, across the board, every measure, there's signs of trouble. And really, how do you get that back quickly? I don't know that them making it and getting a wild card spot is going to do that. I think if anything, people resent the fact that they're kind of slumming in a bad year in a league that's got hardly any winning teams. It's like, well, so what? I mean, big deal. It's not exactly you had to really aspire to greatness to get into a wild card system. I got mixed feelings about it. It is the system. So, I mean, they don't make the system up. They're playing the schedule under the format that it's been imposed on Major League Baseball. But yeah, I can understand even why that would not be an exciting thing for Cardinals fans. So what will it take? Frankly, we've talked about this a lot. What's it going to take? To me, there's no doubt it's going to take just cleaning out the front office. I mean, I'm sorry. There was a lot of good work there done for a long time, but it's going off the rails. And that's not only led to the really big problems in terms of the competitive aspect of this. I mean, the team has gone south, but the front office is like the number one source of frustration and anger and just kind of resistance of like, look, I'm not going down there anymore until they make changes, that kind of thing. I don't think that I don't think that you can really truly start to win your audience back the way to previous levels. It's not just winning. It's got to be, you've got to start fresh because people are just really, really burned out on this regime that's been in place for a very long time. And it's not exactly uncommon that after a while, people get tired of it, especially when they see the same kind of mistakes made over and over and over and over again. And that's really frustrating. I don't blame anybody for feeling that way.
I mean, they finished in last place last year. If they lose tonight, they'll be in last place again with a team that's dull. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to make the argument Listen, I say this out of total love because I will be at the Cubs series in July. I'll be there with my dad to see the Rays and my sister to see the Rays series in August. Cannot wait for either one of these trips.
Sure.
They've got me, right? They've got me. I don't know if people know this. I do a podcast with the Cardinals every week with my friend Bernie Miklasz. I'm invested in what's going on. But I also don't think it's unreasonable for I wrote a piece about Caitlin Clark for New York Magazine this week, kind of comparing purists against casuals, right? Like, and we're purists. Like, by purists, I don't mean we can't change anything. I mean, we obsess over everything. We watch everything. The Cardinals have me. I'm not going anywhere. But the casuals are the ones that matter, right? They're the ones that matter. They're the ones that there's more of them than there are of me. And if you lose them, you're in trouble. And I think the Cardinals have lost the casuals. And that's
Sure.
and I think you are right about Marmol. People just I don't listen. I've said before, I do not think Alan Marmol is some genius manager that's going to lead them to the promised land, but he is not the problem. Like, he's not the problem, and I think people just don't have faith in him. I think they just decided that he represents a lot of the problems, and I don't think that's necessarily fair to Marmol. I don't think he is the source of a lot of problems, but I do think that I think casuals, I hear this from casual fans all the time, just like you do. They always say, "Oh, yeah, that manager, that manager." And I don't think that's fair because I don't think Marmol's a bad manager. I certainly don't think he's the problem, but I think it speaks to the overall issue. People want change. They want change. They're disgruntled and they're frustrated and they're disheartened. And if they lose tonight, they're in last place again. So why wouldn't they be?
Yeah, that's right. And I think Marmol, one of the problems is Mo. He's viewed as Moselek's guy. I think a lot of it's overstated. I think it's unfair to Marmol. Again, people who feel this way, listen, man, I ain't ripping you. I'm just saying, I don't think it's fair to say, well, he's Mo's puppet. But he's kind of perceived that way. And again, when you're perceived that way, it's kind of tough to overcome.
Yeah, and I think this is also part of the byproduct of firing Schilt, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that was part of the idea. Like, what everyone's thoughts about Schilt, and I think and the fact that they never gave, like, you and I have discussed the reason for them firing Schilt, but they never gave like a clear, okay, here's why we did this, and here's why. Like, it just always felt weird. And then when the team struggled after that, I don't know. It's just
And one thing about Ollie, and I actually like Ollie. I guess I'm in the minority. Again, I'm not saying
I'm
you
not
know,
against him.
I think he's done some really good things this year. But it all comes back to the roster in terms of some of the inherent flaws and some of the injuries miscalculations and everything else. And the Cardinals as a front office overrate their own players. And these things. The good news is they signed 3 starting pitchers. The bad news is they don't have any starting pitching depth, which once again has been exposed for how many years in a row now, and they never seem to learn it. But anyway. Yeah, Marmol has nothing to do with that. The way they can't figure out whether Palante should be a starter reliever, Liberatore starter reliever, Thompson starter reliever. I mean, it's just ludicrous stuff. And I think Marmol, because he's the front guy, kind of takes the heat for a lot of that stuff. But I will say this about Ollie: if I were to talk to him, and maybe I'll talk to him soon, it's not up to me to give advice, but this again comes down to messaging. Listen, I know generally speaking the public at large doesn't really care about the media as far as like, well, who cares if he's rude to the media? I get that. So I'm not trying to say, woe is us. You need to feel sorry for the media. I'm not saying that. Please understand. But when the Cardinals are losing to the Rockies, I don't think you want to see the manager getting haughty with Derek Gould. Which happened over the weekend. That's not the time or the place or the situation. Because it only reinforces what I hear that people don't like about Marmol. They think he's arrogant. And I say, well, I actually find him to be kind of humble. He'll conversations I have with him, he'll discuss his flaws. I mean, he's pretty open about it. But when you're on live TV in a post game, you can't come across as arrogant and haughty. Not when you have a team that's losing and a team that's making stupid errors and all the rest. So he doesn't help himself is what I'm trying to say, because the fans see that. And I heard a lot about that over the weekend. People were kind of ticked off, like, who does this guy think he is type thing. And I get it. I mean, you got to be careful when you are sort of the face of the franchise. And from the standpoint, you're talking to the media before every game and after every game. You're the only person. One person does that. before and after every game. That's him. He's got to be better at this. He can't give those vibes.
Yeah, and it's a bad sign when people side with the journalists over you. I'll put it that way. That's
Right.
never a good sign when that happens. Okay, I want to that's probably have time for on this one. I want to do a shout out. Kyle Van is from Bloomington Normal in Central Illinois, and I know, and he points out the Comcast Xfinity problem there. If you have people at Peoria,
Awful.
Springfield, Champaign, Urbana, really bad situation. You cannot watch Cardinals games right now, and after all of this, like I'm going to watch the Cardinals game today. Like I'm like the idea of
Sure.
with everything else going on.
That's because you want to see Paul Skeens.
Yeah, of course, yes, and his influencer girlfriend. But at a certain level, I feel like there is. One way to not resolve this problem is to make it hard for people to watch your team. I know Major League Baseball is trying to get out of this mess. Like they want to I think Major League Baseball would love for MLB TV to just be its own product, no blackouts, no problem. And I think they would love for that to happen in Bally's. I think it's more of a Bally's problem than it is a Major League Baseball or Cardinals problem, but it is still a problem, and it is, and the timing is not great.
That's right. No, I agree 100%. It's awful. It's just awful.
And shout out to Anthony Strain, who sent a very nice email. He's a fan in LA, and he actually asked a question about Nolan Arenado. I think we answered the question because we talked about Arenado, but he compared him to Roland, who also kind of hit a wall around the age 33. They're different type of players.
Yeah, but that a lot of that had to do with. I mean, that had a lot. Just about all of that had to do with Roland's chronic shoulder problems. I mean, serious shoulder problems.
They're definitely different kind of.
I don't. All due respect, I don't buy that analogy. Because with Roland, it was literally physical injury that got like 2 times he busted that shoulder, and it never was the same after that. And it would always bring him down, and he'd rest, and he'd do stuff over the off season. He'd come back and be good for a little while, and then the shoulder would wear out on him again. So that's not the situation at all with Arenado.
Yes, and he said he's really just like curious of the comparison of them because he loves aggressive two-way third baseman.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm sorry, probably you misunderstood. That's my fault. That's my fault. Yeah,
he's all love, and he also not only he said a little shout out to him. He said I've listened to every episode of the pod before last Tuesday, June 4th, and I only missed that one because my daughter was born that day. Rio, happy birthday, Rio, and welcome to Earth. The Cardinals are not always like this, Rio. I promise. But she's in Los Angeles. She'll be a Cardinals fan eventually if she wants to stand out in the throng of blue and Los Angeles. Congratulations, Anthony, and welcome to Earth, Rio.
There you go.
All right, we're going to be back on Monday next week, so we'll be back on Monday, our regular Monday. Bernie, have a great week. Thanks. Enjoy, everybody, and we'll see you this week. And they're back at 500.
There you go. And and hey, what the hell, right? 3-day games at Wrigley Field starting Friday. Life is good no matter how the teams are. But anyway, I just want to stop real quick and thank everyone for listening to us. I think we get really good feedback, and just can't thank you enough. Will and I most definitely appreciate it. So everyone should know that.
I get to talk to you every week about the Cardinals, and it keeps me. And Anthony points out that he's an out of town fan, how essential the show is for them. I am an out of town person as well, so I feel like it's very essential for me to stay in. So Bernie, have a great week. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Both of my kids will be away at camp on Father's Day, so I'm just, and my dad will be on a flying away, so I'm just a solo.
That's the modern world, right?
That's exactly. All right, Bernie, have a great week. We'll talk next Monday. We'll check everybody then.